And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live. And joining me is Michel Shane, produced this incredible film, 21 Miles in Malibu. Michel is also the chairman of the Emily Shane Foundation. He is a longtime resident of Malibu. And he also did one of my favorite films, I have to say, Catch Me If You Can. I mean, I put that on all the time. So thanks a lot for joining us, Michel. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking to you.
Extraordinary film, 21 Miles in Malibu. I've been telling everyone I know to take a look at this film because I know a lot of people look at Malibu and say, it's a playground for the rich and famous. But it is, I suppose, yeah. But it's also the freeway where people go from one part of California to the other and everything in between, right? It's a place that people go for the day, for the weekend. It's got millions of visitors every year. And it's also very, very dangerous. So let's talk about the Pacific Coast Highway that runs through all of Malibu. Can we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very strange situation because, as we say in the film from the former mayor, Lou Lamont, most places in California that have PCH have a couple miles of it, and that's okay. It's the length of Malibu. It divides the ocean from the mountains, and it's there. And unfortunately, it's a highway that was built to go, that you were built to go drive on it at 65 miles an hour. And, the speed limits are 35, 45, and 50. And by driving on it, and when there's no traffic, you kind of go faster than you're supposed to go. And it's very dangerous because of where it's located. People easily cross it thinking it's just a normal road when it's a highway.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm in Malibu all the time. I live nearby. I don't get that whole thing with people crossing Malibu. There's a median there, but it's like hardly a median, right? There's no barrier, there's nothing. And I think, are these people crazy? Or the bike riders? I mean, people's handlebars are right next to my car as I'm driving. I have kind of a fat car. And I also think people are taking their own lives in their hands when they do that. We're going to talk about what are some of the answers as we go on in our show. You know, are they pedestrian bridges, for example? I don't even know if they could be built. Barriers in the center, not sure. Again, we'll go through it. But I'd also like to start with the history of the PCH through Malibu. I didn't know about it, right? The family who owned it. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting because you kind of look at Malibu and you look at it as it is today, and you kind of go, oh, it was always like this, but it wasn't. And the most amazing thing is the Ringe family that basically bought up the land on pennies on the dollar in 1900s and, owned it. And it was their ranch, and they didn't want people going through it. So the people that lived here kind of had to either get a pass from them to go through it to get into Santa Monica, or were stuck. And it became a whole big battle. The May Ringe, who was the survivor of the family, and the wife lost her husband, I think, in mid 1920s or so, and took on the rest of the family, or maybe it was a little later. Sorry, I'm not sure of the dates. But lost her fortune trying to protect Malibu from being a freeway, a throughway for people to go on. And the government basically at one point went all the way to California Supreme Court, and they said, look, people get the right to enjoy such beauty, and we're going to allow them. And that's when people started taking their Model Ts and whatnot and driving up to Malibu for the day at the beach. And then started the Colony, which was where all the film people went, and it grew and it grew and grew. The thing that's so amazing about Malibu is that the reputation is global, and the way people look at Malibu is the land of the rich and famous. But there's a lot of normal people here, and there are people with regular jobs, living regular lives, who aren't being interviewed, but who really just go about life as if they lived in anywheres. And I guess it's bad and it's good, you know?
Yeah. Let me dial back a little bit to who did the family buy the property from for pennies on the dollar? A lot of people don't even know that either. And let's talk about, I believe that she hired some ranch hands to
Oh
say,
yeah.
hey, anybody on my property, they get, let's talk about it.
So I don't know who they bought it from. It could have been, it was like land for sale at that time.
Yeah,
It might have even been the government at that time.
I
I have
see.
no idea. I actually have. I'm going to look into that and get back to you on it. But yeah, May Ridge was a pretty mean lady. She said to her hired ranch hands, "There's no warning shots here. Someone comes
Yeah.
on my land, you shoot them." So it was pretty serious, and excuse the term, she was a badass, and she deserved look at how
Yeah.
beautiful Malibu is, and think of
Mm.
it with nothing and the beauty being there, and she wanted to protect that. It was her land.
Yeah. I mean, I asked initially who she bought it from because I also wasn't sure. Was it the government? Was it the Native American tribes? I really wasn't sure. But there was a time when, of course, it was in their hands, the Native
Yes, of course.
Americans. And then one way or another, the government bought it, their family bought it. Anybody trying to cross through it, even just to go to school in Santa Monica, as you were talking about in your film, they faced possibly getting shot. I mean, by her family. So you're right to call her a badass. I would have called her something even worse. But pretty extraordinary. So you've got this road that the government allowed to go through Malibu, saying that everybody deserves to enjoy it, and it's now owned, of course, right, by Caltrans, by the state, isn't it?
Correct. It's a state road,
Yeah.
state highway.
So you've got this little beautiful town of Malibu, and its Main Street, right? Little Main Street, USA, Malibu is run by the state. So hence it's been a real struggle, right, for the locals to say, we got to do something here. This is our Main Street and it's a freeway. So tell me about the battle that's been going on
So
to
it
try and make this safer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a real weird situation. Here's the
Yeah.
Malibu City Council looking at how do I make my community better, and they don't control the main roadway through the community.
Yeah.
And if they took it over to kind of control what was going on, it would bankrupt the city. I mean, the cost of maintaining 21 miles of PCH must be enormous. And Caltrans' mission is to move traffic. That's what they're about. Get you from
Right.
point A to point B as quickly as possible, safely, but as quickly as possible. And that may not really jive with what we need as people and as people that live in the community. I mean, at one point, there's less. This summer, there were actually no deaths on PCH, and that had a lot to do with the sheriffs and what they were able to do to keep us safe. But for the first time in a long time, I can't tell you when, that's what happened this summer, is there were no deaths on PCH, which is quite amazing because I remember the year when Emily was murdered in 2010, and that's what kind of initiated this whole film. I was at home and I was reading week after week after week, this person injured, this person killed, this person, and I'm going, this is unbelievable. We've got to do something about it. And there was no way for me. I'm not a politician who has the time. And second of all, I needed a way to communicate it. And being a filmmaker, this was the best way for me to communicate it. And it was a long journey.
Yeah, you talked about your beautiful daughter, Emily. Would you please tell our audience who's not familiar with what happened with Emily, what happened, particularly from your point of view and your wife, Ellen, right?
Yeah.
You were at home. You were going to pick her up, right? She was at a friend's house.
Yeah.
Lovely evening. And here you are driving along. Tell us.
So it was Easter weekend, April 3rd, 2010, obviously embedded in my mind forever. Regular Saturday, Emily had a sleepover at a friend's house. It was mid-afternoon, 4 o'clock or something like that. We were going to a movie that night. So we called her and said, do you want to come home? Do you sleeping over? You know, it's it's spring break, so the rules become a little less strict.
Right.
And she said, ironically, to Ellen, "Yeah, I think I want to come home. I've had enough." So Ellen called to me and said, "When can you go?" And I said, "I can go in about 20 minutes." And Emily went, "I'd rather you'd come now if you could." So I
Oh,
said, "I'm going to come." And I go down the canyon where we live, and I look at, I'm waiting for the light to change at PCH, and this maniac is driving down the street like you wouldn't believe, cutting lanes, making lanes, going into the opposite lane, just speeding around, probably about 70, 80 miles an hour down PCH. And I shook my head and I went, "My God, this is not going to end well." Not
oof.
thinking that, anything could happen to me or my family. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. He pointed his car at her and he killed her, hoping to take his own life at the same time. He survived. Emily did not. And my life changed forever. I mean, I could talk very openly now because we're in 2023, but for a very long time, it was very hard for me to discuss her murder.
Well, particularly when you went past there, you had seen that something
Oh,
happened. You had noticed lights in the distance.
yeah.
You were speaking with your wife on the phone, right? Never thinking, never.
No, I actually passed and thank God it was after, because had I seen it, I don't think I would have survived. Um, I had probably a minute after it happened. I drove by the overturned car. Emily had been shot into the air and over the bream, over the hill. So I didn't see her. And I remember thinking to myself saying, "Oh, Emily was supposed to be there. Nah, it's not. Can't be." And then thinking, "Oh boy, I better move, because if I get caught here, I'm never getting to Emily. I'm never getting home. This highway is going to close. It's going to be a total mess." And I got to where I was supposed to meet her, and she wasn't there. And I'm looking around, and I text Ellen, "Can you call the family and see if I should go to the house?" And they say her friend said she left. And then Ellen got a call from the sheriffs saying that there'd been an accident. So Ellen called me immediately, and I said, "Oh, I saw where the accident is. Don't let them do anything. I'm heading over there." And so I went over there, and they said they were going to airlift her to Children's Hospital, and I should get in my car and drive over to the hospital. And I said, "Look, she's 13 years old. You're gonna need all sorts of permissions. I'm going with her. I don't want her to be alone. Just tell me where I need to meet her and this and that." So they brought me down to where the EMTs were working with her on her at Zuma Beach, where there's a helicopter landing pad. And unfortunately, she didn't survive. She died right there. And
Oh,
I mean, it's brutal. There's no one in the world I wish it on. If I could avoid anyone having to live this life, I would. And that's kind of what drove me to make this film.
you are extraordinary people. I also know you called your wife and family after, and you said, "We're going to make something out of her life." Immediately, you did that, which is amazing that you would think that way. And of course, your family formed the Emily Shane Foundation. Do you want to briefly tell us about that?
Yeah, it's, do I want to what? Excuse me?
Do you want to tell us about the Emily Shane
Oh,
Foundation?
sure, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, so I got home, and of course I can't even, I barely remember what went on back then. Um, but what I didn't want to happen was, who's that poor child killed on PCH? Who was that kid that was killed on PCH? I didn't want
Right.
that to be her legacy. It showed no thought of who she was or what her life was about. And even though it was a very short life of only 13 years, it was really important to me that her life lives on. So initially, I started a Pass It Forward campaign, where you do something for someone else, looking for no in no response from that person. You just do something to do it, and they in turn do the same thing to the next person, and so on and so forth. You know, it's the old TV commercial. You tell two people, they tell two people, and it grows and grows and grows. And it really was initially unbelievable how many people were donating things. It was incredible. Yeah. And Ellen was thinking about it. And unfortunately, we spent 2 years in court trying to have the guy who killed her convicted. We did. He got 15 years to life. And that's a whole other discussion, but that's where it's at now. Ellen felt that she had to do something, and she had worked very closely with Emily. Emily was a very creative, kind, giving person. And when she's in school, she struggled. She was on what's called the 504. But she was creative. She loved to dance. She just was highly, highly creative. And she really wasn't motivated by day-to-day school, and she had some learning issues. So Ellen started the SEED program, Successful Educational Achievements, for middle school students. And it's for kids who are struggling, who are not on IEPs and different programs, but rather are mainstream and are falling between the cracks because they either don't understand or their home life's a mess or whatever. And we're 10 years in with that. And we've helped over 1,000 students. And my favorite story that I love to tell, and then I'll stop talking, is there was a girl who was in Oxnard who came to the program and went through the program during middle school and then left, which is normal. And we don't really keep track of where they go afterwards. And about 4 or 5 years later, we got an application from her to be a mentor at the Emily Shane Foundation for the SEED program. So she could give back for what she got, because she said, had I not had that program, I would not have finished high school and I would not have gone to college.
Talk about a pass it forward moment. I mean, Michel, that is everything. That is everything.
Everything.
Because I know
I'm retired.
Yeah, but I know how hard you and Ellen and the family work, and everyone on the Emily Shane Foundation and the SEED program. So thank you, Emily,
Absolutely,
for your sacrifice. Honestly, I don't know how else to say it. I also
it's not a sacrifice, Deborah. It's her legacy.
Yeah,
and this way she's not invisible. You know, she's there.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very well put. Thank you so much, Michel. That is so well put. You know, there's another, there's so many people who've lost their lives on the PCH. A woman, of course, she was training for, I believe, a triathlon, right? What's amazing is Ironman, how fleeting it is, right? One moment you're driving to pick up your daughter, the next moment this happens. One moment, and you talk about the woman in your film, you know, she's training, she's on her bike, she's saying to her friend, come on, keep riding with me. He doesn't, she keeps going, her life is lost. Within seconds, within moments, this happens because the PCH is sort of just, it's narrow, right? I believe it's a 4-lane highway, small median in the middle, tiny little shoulder with bike lane. And this is what happens, right? And you highlight that as well in your film, in your documentary.
Yeah, it's a very sad story. She was training for a Ironman competition. And so, you know, it's a grueling race, Ironman.
Yeah.
I think top 2 or 3% of athletes actually can do it. And she was training with her team, and she'd gone for a ride on PCH to keep in training. And her partner was running a little bit late, was running behind her. And the pavement on the road was not flat. And there was like a little crack in the road, and her wheel of her bike got caught there, which caused her to fall over. And as she fell over, a bus was coming. So it was a horrific accident. The bus driver's life is destroyed. Her family's life is destroyed. She died, her friends. You see, what people don't seem to think about is the poor person died, but the connection to the person, that people that live from the person that died, is enormous.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's a burden. It really is. And so what we wanted to do in the film was, Emily's was a situation where it couldn't be avoided, because you had a deranged guy who, he could have had a gun, pointed his gun at Emily and shot, and she died. He had a car, so it wasn't a gun, but it's the same thing. This other story is just, there's problems in the road, and she got caught and she died. I mean, it's horrific. Horrific. It's not a feel-good film, that, unfortunately. And it tries to show what the problems are, because what we want to do is start a grassroots movement.
Right.
Get people angry, get people involved, because change starts with the group at the bottom pushing up. It never starts from the top down.
What about a march and shutting down the PCH? I mean, there's so many ways to just grab the attention of the local and state, particularly the state in this case, because it's their road, right? Have you guys ever done anything like that? I mean, because marches, a lot of times people say, it's a march. But, if you continue something like that, it draws attention to it, and this is what's happened, and you keep at it, irritating the people who need to use the road and they can't, and then the state will, I don't know. Have you ever thought about that?
I haven't thought about a march, but there've been, different studies, a ton of studies. And the last one, which was probably about 6 years ago, they came up with 52 or 54 changes that they should implement on PCH to make it safer for everybody. And, in 6 years, 0 has happened.
Why? No. Why?
I have no idea why. I mean, listen, I made this film because I wanted to create change, and I am very passionate about it, but I'm not the poster boy for this. This is up to others to create this change. The government, the city council, it's a human life. One life is thought of like, oh, geez, it's so sad. But that one life ripples. And if everyone who lost someone on PCH started a campaign to start creating change, for elected officials to get into power, they need those people. And there has to be a way to create change, and there has to be a way where we aren't just compliant. We just go, well, it's PCH, it's a different, dangerous road. And there's hundreds of these roads all over the world. I mean, PCH is an example. In New York, in London, all over the world, there are places where people are killed, and there can be changes that can be made. So you talked earlier, you said, why aren't there footbridges or pedestrian bridges? We came up with an idea, it didn't make it into the film, but we came up with an idea that you put designed pedestrian bridges across PCH all over. Now, right now, they're just concrete bridges, and it's ugly. But if you put designed bridges and got major corporations to sponsor them as art exhibits, a Coca-Cola bridge, a Google bridge, 500,000 people come through Malibu on a long weekend. I mean, you end up making enormous impressions. You end up making enormous safety changes, and you create a work of art that goes along PCH that all of a sudden people want to see. Now, of course, it takes more traffic, but you're solving two problems. It's not costing the city or the state, and you're creating beauty.
All right, so we talk footbridges. Let's talk about 2 or 3 others that would make an enormous impact. I know. Can they do speed bumps on a state road? I don't know.
No.
You can't. What about stop signs?
Yeah. So there's a couple things you can do.
Please.
In England, they have these readers, which are just now going in here in Malibu, license plate readers. The ones that are being installed in Malibu are license plate readers, so that if there's ever a situation where there's a problem, they can track that license plate by putting it into the computer and seeing where it had gone through. But in England, they have this thing on the M freeways, which is their freeway system, where there's a sign that says, your license plate has been photographed. The speed limit is X. If you exit the freeway before what would be the normal speed to get there, there will be a ticket waiting for you in the mail. So right away you think, oh my God, geez, that's horrible. And you drive and you get 2 weeks later, you get home and it costs you $100. The other thing that they should do is, so that's the cost of my trip. It cost me an extra $100 to take that trip. What if that was $1,000? What is that $1,500? All of a sudden, people wouldn't rush to speed because they don't want to waste that money or throw it out the window. And then
and you have
go ahead.
No, and then you have signs posted everywhere, as you said. It's like, this ticket's going to cost you $1,000, and whether people can afford it, whether they can afford it, or whether they cannot. Hopefully that'll be a big deterrent, because nobody really wants to lose $1,000, whether it's all they've got or whether it's, whether they can afford it. Right? I mean, who wants to? Right. What else you were going to say?
So the other thing we kind of touched on was, what if getting a driver's license was more complicated? Or what if a driver's license was more complicated and cost you more? I mean, there's ways to do that. Now, that hurts people if it costs more, but I think the big thing would be raise the cost of the tickets, make them really exorbitant, and make a driver's license more intelligent, harder to attain than doing a quick little exam and a little road trip with an instructor and getting your license.
What about the barrier? Not the cement barrier where you bang into it, but the other ones. I think they have them along Santa Monica. They're like those hard rubbery kind. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I mean, I think they're deterrents anyway. It might. The problem is, a lot of people are going to argue, oh, they're ugly, you can't see the ocean. Well, what am I going to say about that? I mean, it's safer. It's about safety. That sort of trumps everything, in my opinion. No?
Sure, it does, but part of the problem with those barriers is their height, and sometimes they keep you from seeing what's necessary. I see. If the road is, and we deal with this in the film, if the road isn't properly marked and you've never been here before and you jump and you go out onto the road, if you don't realize that you've got 2 lanes in both directions, you may think it's a 2-lane road and head up the wrong way. And then all of a sudden, you're in a terrible situation.
Wow. So what's next? I mean, I believe that this is going to be shown at a very well-known film festival. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So the first time it's going to be shown to the public is at the Santa Barbara Film Festival, which is a very prestigious film festival. We've been invited. It's going to be, quote unquote, the world premiere of the film. And we're excited. It's February 16th and 18th up in Santa Barbara, and we're in competition, and who knows, maybe we get a little recognition, maybe we don't, but I think the interesting thing is we got some recognition by being accepted at this prestigious film festival.
Yeah. You said that it's not a very easy film to watch, but in a lot of ways it is, because it's very much a community film too, right? You talk about, as you said, the former mayor. You went to some of the business owners, right? And they've been part of the community forever. And to me, this was a community film, a community documentary. And I love that about it. I got a better feel, a better understanding about Malibu, its history, and the people who are currently living there who really care and want to do something. They just don't know what to do. And, being a media person myself, I always say, grab the media attention. That's why I said, what about a march, a PCH? Because let's face it, everybody's going to cover it, right? They're all going to come. You've got the aerial view. You've got the news stations. I'm just saying, a documentary, particularly being shown at the Santa Barbara Film Festival. Brilliant. I mean, the more of this that we can do, the better. because then it really gets the ear of the people who could really do something about it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. What I'm hoping I can do when the weather warms up a little bit is do a showing in Bluffs Park of the documentary, so
Love
that
it.
the whole community and whoever wants to can come out and see the film. And
Yeah.
then maybe we get smarter people than myself involved.
Yeah. No, you've done an extraordinary job, Michel. You really have. And I know you didn't set out to be a community activist necessarily, nor do you think yourself as one, but the work you've done is really going to make a lot of changes. So thank you so much for coming on. Anything else you'd like to tell our audience before we let you go?
No, just drive carefully, be safe, and enjoy. I mean, it's a beautiful place, and everyone's welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I frequent Malibu a lot. You know that. I'm always there. It's my little go-to place to gain a little bit of peace. There's something about that place. The minute I sort of drive over the Malibu sign, you know, I take a deep breath and suddenly everything changes. There is something magical about it. But if you slow down and take that in, people, you're going to save not just your life, but somebody else's. So thank you so much for doing this, Michel. I look forward to going to Santa Barbara and viewing with you. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
We're planning to attend. Yeah. So thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you if they want to get involved?
I guess the best way is go to the website, 21milesinmalibu.com, and send us an email, or through the Emily Shane Foundation, info@emilyshane.org. Is the easiest way. And the film is not at all part of the foundation, because as a foundation, we're not allowed to be politically active. But
Right.
the foundation is in the film, and, you know, it's part of my life, and this film is part of my life.
Yeah, beautiful. And how can people view the film? How could they see it?
They can't yet. We have to.
But
we're in the process of setting up distribution and working towards getting the film out there. And if we don't get picked up as in distribution, then I'll put it up on YouTube, and anyone and everyone will be able to see it. So
beautiful.
I didn't make this film for like all my other films as a profit center. I made this film to create change.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be keeping in touch with you about that too, when people can finally view this, because it's an important film to see. Thank you very much, Michel Shane. 21 Miles in Malibu. Also check out the Emily Shane Foundation and the great work that you're all doing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate all you're doing. And please find our interview, everybody, on all video platforms of Deborah Kobylt Live, and audio as well. Just put in our name, Deborah Kobylt Live and Michel Shane, and it'll pop up. So thanks so much for being there. Invite your friends as well, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Deborah. Really appreciate it.